let's just dive right into this massive alternative history outlined by Mike Barra. Because honestly, what if everything we know about the space race is literally only half the story? We are looking at a narrative here that suggests humanity's reach for the stars has actually been running on two completely separate tracks for decades, maybe even longer.
To navigate this sprawling conspiracy, we'll follow a quick 5-part roadmap. First up, the two space programs. Then, 19th century mystery airships. Third, World War II and Nazi superweapons. Fourth, Roswell and Majestic 12. And finally, NASA's impossible anomalies. The author hooks us right out of the gate with this explosive quote from Ben Rich, suggesting that impossible technologies are already locked away in black projects. I mean, when the former director of Lockheed Skunk Works, the actual facility responsible for the U-2 and the SR-71 Blackbird, reportedly makes a statement like this, it absolutely begs the question, what exactly do they know how to do, and how long have they actually known how to do it?
So let's jump into Section 1, the two space programs, public rockets versus classified tech.
The core theory we're exploring is that a highly advanced, classified space program developed right alongside the NASA that we all watched on TV. On one hand, you've got the public program battling the absolute limits of chemical rockets, fully visible to taxpayers like us. But then, on the other hand, sits this shadow program. According to the text, it's operating with classified black budgets and exotic physics completely hidden from public view. It's like two different worlds.
Moving on to Section 2, 19th century mystery airships, the pre-flight era.
All right, enter NIMZA. This is a shadowy group of Prussian nobles who supposedly sent engineers to America to secretly develop advanced aircraft. The source material claims this consortium actually funded theoretical physicists to study ancient Hindu and Vedic texts, like the Vaimanika Shastra, and they weren't treating these as myths, right? They were treating them as actual engineering manuals, complete with descriptions of mercury vortex engines and unbreakable metal alloys. Wild, right?
Now check out this timeline. An engineer named Charles Delsho arrives in America in 1850 and eventually helps form the Sonora Air Club in California. They allegedly invent this anti-gravity lifting fluid called NB gas. Fast forward a bit, and suddenly, by the late 1890s, the entire western United States is gripped by a massive wave of mysterious airship sightings. And this whole flap culminates in the famous 1897 Aurora, Texas incident, where a metallic craft covered in hieroglyphs supposedly crashed right into a local windmill. Way before the Wright brothers, mind you.
Which leaves us with a totally fascinating question. How does this early aerospace mystery connect to the horrors of the Second World War? If a Prussian consortium really developed anti-gravity flight back in the 1890s, where on earth did that technology go for the next 40 years?
That brings us to Section 3, World War II and Nazi superweapons, derived and the Foo Fighters. According to the lore in the book, the Nazis had this highly classified device that acted as an anti-gravity reactor. And interestingly, it used a fuel that sounds incredibly similar to that old 19th century NMB gas. We're talking about Die Glocke, or the bell. It's described as a heavy metal device using counter-rotating cylinders and a weird violet mercury-like fluid called Exerm 525. Rumor has it, this terrifying machine generated such an intense electromagnetic field that it could literally cancel out gravity and inertia, just completely defying the known laws of physics. So, the theory goes that by combining these specific elements, the Nazis successfully engineered the world's first working flying saucers, known as the Haunebu craft. Think about it. You take the inertia-canceling reactor of the Bell, you pair it with the aerodynamic vortex control of Victor Schauberger's repulsor airframe, fuel the whole shebang with Xerum 525, and suddenly, you've got a craft capable of impossible speeds and right-angle turns. Now, here is an absolutely crucial point. Immediately following the war, in 1946, an enormous American military expedition to Antarctica basically retreated in a panic. Allegedly, this was after battling these surviving Nazi saucers. Operation High Jump sent an aircraft carrier, destroyers, and almost 5,000 men down to New Schwabenland. The narrative relays these persistent rumors that the massive force was attacked by otherworldly disc-shaped craft. They retreated a full 6 months early. And afterward, Admiral Byrd publicly warned the press of a new threat that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds.
And that leads right into Section 4, Roswell and Majestic 12, the Cold War cover-up.
Before we jump straight to extraterrestrials, the author points out something super interesting.
Those famous UFO sightings that basically kicked off the modern craze, they might have actually been captured unstable Nazi flying wing aircraft being tested in the American Northwest. Kenneth Arnold's 1947 sighting of skipping, crescent-shaped objects perfectly matches the description of the Nazi HO-229 flying wing. It was a brilliant but deeply unstable aerodynamic design captured by the Allies. In fact, that skipping motion Arnold described is exactly how an unstable flying wing behaves without modern computer controls.
Then, following the infamous Roswell crash, leaked briefing documents suggest the creation of Majestic 12, or MJ-12, to manage this massive secret. Whether the crashed craft were advanced Nazi experiments, extraterrestrial scout ships, or maybe a combination of both, this uber top-secret group of scientists and military leaders was supposedly operating in the shadows with zero public oversight.
According to the lore, this shadow government even published a special operations manual categorizing an incredible variety of distinct unexplained craft operating in our skies. We're talking about 4 main types here. It details everything from small 30 to 150-foot disc-shaped scout ships to massive cigar-shaped fuselage carriers. Then there are these ovoid or acorn-shaped craft equipped with tripod landing gear. And finally, the gigantic triangular stealth craft, the kind that would later become famous during the 1997 Phoenix Lights incident.
So, to combat these highly advanced threats, the theory claims the military secretly funded research into electrogravitics, and they supposedly developed thrusters that were mathematically up to 140,000% efficient. Yeah, you heard that right, 140,000%. American inventor T. Townsend Brown discovered that if you pump high voltage through specialized capacitors, they actually move without traditional thrust. By using exotic materials like barium titanate, Brown's electrokinetic thrusters essentially warped local gravity. It allowed a craft to constantly fall forward on a gravity wave. To put that into perspective, that's a technology that would make a trip to Mars take 5 days instead of 9 months, a total game changer.
But this logically leads us to a huge question. If the military actually had this anti-gravity technology, why were we visibly struggling so much with chemical rockets on the world stage? I mean, why was the Vanguard rocket blowing up on the launch pad for all to see if Black Ops teams were already surfing gravity waves?
Let's look at Section 5, NASA's Impossible Anomalies, the Mathematics of Mystery. Back in 1958, America's Explorer 1 satellite arrived at its tracking station exactly 11 minutes late. Now, in the process, it achieved an impossible 60% higher orbit than the rocket's thrust should have ever allowed. Based on the strict rocket equation, you know exactly when a satellite will appear over a tracking station down to the second. Explorer 1 completely defying this math was physically impossible based on its chemical thrust alone. It literally defied the laws of physics as we know them. And the problem only got worse a year later. The Pioneer 4 probe inexplicably picked up excess velocity and missed the moon by an incredible 37,000 miles. Think about that for a second. You calculate the exact trajectory to hit the moon in a vacuum, but the probe somehow acquires massive, unexplained forward thrust along the way. Newtonian physics says this simply cannot happen. No way.
The fascinating conclusion the author draws here is that these physics-defying anomalies weren't calculation errors at all. Instead, they were the direct result of hidden, exotic field propulsion interfering with the local gravity. The theory suggests Wernher von Braun and his NASA team weren't doing bad math. No, their chemical rockets were actually flying through space-time that was actively being warped and distorted by the parallel secret space program who were testing their electrogravitic craft in the exact same orbit. It's like trying to swim straight in a pool while someone else is creating massive whirlpools right next to you.
As we wrap up this explainer, we really have to ask ourselves a provocative question based on this entire alternative history. Are we only seeing a fraction of our own history in space? If the text is correct, and technologies capable of bending physics have been locked away since the Cold War, or even all the way back to the 19th century, what else is waiting out there, hidden just beyond the public eye? Keep that in mind the next time you look up at the night sky.